Getting beat up by 9 guys in Syracuse, to me, there's not a whole lot of shame.
Welcome to the Heel to the Face podcast.
And this right here,
with your hosts, Jared Wicks, Brandon Icebreaker Clements, and Paul Boy Green Esden.
It doesn't matter what your name is. And that's the bottom line. Cause Stone Cold
I have received an email.
Don't forget to email the show at heeltotheface@hotmail.com.
Best there is, the best there was, or the best there ever will be.
Brett screwed Brett because it's what's best for business.
To be the man, you gotta beat the man. The champ is here. Oh yeah, New Day Rock. And if you're not down with that, we got you. Oh yeah.
Tweet us using the handle @HeelToTheFace.
Woo! Let's get ready to suck it!
The bell is rung, so let's step in the ring with your hosts, Paul, Brandon, and Jared.
I might as well tag me up with my buddy from Syracuse.
The Heel to the Face podcast is on the air for the first week of November 2017, and what a week it was in the world of professional wrestling as we are joined this week with Brandon the Icebreaker Clements. He's currently licking pizza stains off of his shirt. You know, there's that stereotype about wrestling fans being kind of, lazy, middle 20s white men, and we're not helping that stereotype right now as we're joined, as I mentioned, with Brandon the Icebreaker Clements. Paul Boy Green Esden will be joining us later in the show, and myself, Jared Wicks. Don't forget to join the program always on Twitter @HeelToTheFace. That's where you will find the links for all our programs. We will be getting on YouTube shortly, but right now we are currently on iTunes, Spreaker, and all those places. You can find the links on our Twitter account, as well as our Twitter questions of the week. And this past week, some exclusive photos of my trip to, and believe me, non-wrestling aside, I have a lot to say about my trip this past Sunday to Bound for Glory 2017. We'll save that for later in the show. But let's get things started for the first time in WWE history. And there's not a lot of times you can say a first in WWE history, but the World Championship changed hands in the United Kingdom. Is WrestleMania coming next? Are they finally going to give the UK some good stuff?
They might. It's possible. Why not? I mean, they got a great fan base in the UK. I mean, why wouldn't they? I mean, they've done that. I mean, obviously Canada's, right, our family to the north, but across the pond, I mean, they have the great fans. I love it, like watching, I mean, we'll get into the crowd things a little bit later. That's a teaser, guys. The fans over there are great. I think they put on, sometimes it's more interesting to see what the fans are doing sometimes over, compared to sometimes the in-ring action. So I think it's due. I mean, WWE's put a lot of stock into the UK Championship. Obviously, they have their own little brand there. So, I mean, there's enough stock in it. I could see London in the
only problem that I see, and this happened, and I was surprised. This is why you never really see championships change hands, or at least big championships change hands, like we saw with AJ Styles on SmackDown becoming the new WWE Heavyweight Champion. Is that the time zone change, and that makes it so Raw and SmackDown are rarely ever, if in this case still continued, not to be live. So if WrestleMania or SummerSlam or anything was over in the UK or anywhere in Europe for that matter, I mean, it would have to be around 1 or 2 o'clock Eastern time here. And I know WWE does not want to give up that coveted primetime spot that they have in North America. Both Canada, America, Mexico, everywhere in North America would be early. In fact, I think California would probably have to start about 10 a.m. for about a 8 p.m. start in England. So that is probably the biggest hang-up that they have.
Well, you can't do anything pre-recorded, so to speak. I mean, we used to call it pre-taped, or taped and air it later, because as you can see, that, I mean,
in the Twitter world, you can't do that. I mean, back in the day, you'd be able to do that. And back in the day, they had UK exclusive pay-per-view events. I'm not, when it goes to those rebellions, insurrection, I'm not really understanding what those were supposed to be. They were pay-per-view only events. You could actually, I believe, buy them on pay-per-view here, maybe like after they've already aired, but they were on in a prime time there. Meaning, I think you could buy them on pay-per-view here at like 4 p.m. If I think only some you could, I think most you couldn't. They were Sky Box Office exclusive, but they were house shows. They were house shows with pyro.
Yeah,
I didn't really understand because again, titles didn't change hands because of the fact that they were not hyped up in the United States of America, so they were essentially house shows. I would actually, we used to love this all the time. I had a few of those UK pay-per-views on DVD, and you would watch the hype-ups. They would have, let's say, Triple H versus The Undertaker for the World Championship. Now, in America, that wasn't a championship match that was going to be happening at the next pay-per-view. So you'd be like, well, how are they hyping this match up? How are they doing the video packages? They would show some, like, meaningless, weird encounters that they had. Let's say like Triple H is feuding with Hulk Hogan. I think this was 2001. He was feuding with Hulk Hogan, and he was they were going to face at the next American pay-per-view, Judgment Day. And in the back, he like brushed up against The Undertaker, which led to like a match they had that night on Raw, Triple H versus The Undertaker. Well, they like used that video to like hype up their championship match. Like there was this typical ongoing storyline heading into this. But essentially, again, these were just house shows with not really much backing behind them. They might have like a rematch from a American pay-per-view before. But again, they weren't using too much video packages because we're kind of getting off topic, but the point is,
we usually do that.
I would love to see more stuff brought to the UK, and I'm very surprised in a bunch of ways. I'm kind of lukewarm on this fact that AJ Styles is a champion because, again, I've never seen this before in my life, but the last couple of weeks, WWE writing is just on the fly. What is going on
here? They just kind of write it real quick and send it in. It's been very interesting. And you know what? We were talking last week. I told you there was more to it than we just, it was just a regular match. I said it last week. I just had this feeling that, maybe they're going to throw the title on AJ. That's, why have this match, if you're not going to do something about it?
AJ versus Brock Lesnar, no doubt about it, a much more intriguing matchup.
It's WWE's, that's the money train right there.
And essentially the matchup they're going to now give us on Raw with the fact that they're still doing title for title, so it looks like it's going to be the Bar versus the Usos, gives us the more intriguing matchup of the Shield with Roman Reigns essentially returning this Monday on Raw to face the New Day in what we're supposed to essentially got back at tables, ladders, and chairs, and that's a full Shield. Reigns, Rollins.
Finally.
Yes, and Dean Ambrose. But instead of taking on The Miz and that group, they're now going to move on and face the New Day. So Survivor Series is shaping up to be a better pay-per-view than they advertised a week before, because what we were going to get was part of the Shield as the tag champs versus the Usos. Now we're going to get that as a separate match with the Bar versus the Usos, which I actually think might be a better tag team match in that aspect. The Bar versus the Usos, and then we're going to get the Shield as another match. So now we're starting to turn this into a longer pay-per-view than, because this is going to be one of those 4-hour pay-per-views that they advertise starting at 7 o'clock. And I was kind of wondering, how are they going to make this a long pay-per-view? It doesn't seem like they have a lot of good matches.
I think we figured that out now.
They're starting to stretch things out. I'm assuming now they're going to try to do something maybe with Jinder Mahal versus somebody else to make that another match. But my question is, I kind of get the Roman Reigns deal because they didn't know when he was going to be ready to compete. But with AJ Styles and Jinder Mahal, let's say, why were they advertising Jinder Mahal versus Brock? Like, why were they trying to hype this match up if they weren't even going to give it to us?
Yeah,
like, why were they having Brock Lesnar come out and accept the challenge? Like, what is?
Why are we wasting airtime then?
Yes.
What's the point? You know what I mean? That's why I kind of read the tea leaves, so to speak, and I'm like, why in the heck are we doing the AJ Styles thing? And you know what? It happened. I don't know what they're going to do with Jinder Mahal at this point. I mean,
because again, what's weird is a lot of times WWE, they don't screw over their own matches that they've made. They're trying to promote these matches, trying to sell these matches. So if it was a sense of if he lost the title, he was still going to face Brock Lesnar, then I can kind of see, okay, I understand, because the title's not going to be on the line at the Survivor Series. So essentially treat it like this is a pay-per-view before we get to Survivor Series. And give somebody else the title. But the idea is it's going to be champion versus champion. So you hype up this match, and I like what Jinder Mahal said before, that AJ Styles was just an entree. He's getting ready for Brock Lesnar, and that's going to be the match. And when he said that, that really made me feel like he was going to keep the championship, just because, again, they've been selling us this match. And it's a week before the pay-per-view, and not because of injury or last-minute decision like we saw last month at TLC, but because of WWE writing on their own, we're going to get a completely different match for the main event at Survivor Series.
Yeah, and you know what? It's, WWE Creative, they've been really, like you said, they really have been on the fly. I mean, I think it's a better look, though. I think it's going to be a better, I think this card is going to be a lot better going into it. I mean, we're going to be there pretty quick here, so
Next Sunday night.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean,
Now-
we're right on the corner.
Some other news that were made for the Survivor Series. John Cena. There was this speculation. I want to give. This is the most ridiculous. If you ever wanted to get some credit at a national news source and you don't really think that you can do it, don't underestimate yourself. Honest to God, the Sun, which is a news publication, actually it was either the Sun or the Daily Mail, but either way, these are not. I'm not saying well reputable, but they're supposed to be decent news organizations.
Yeah.
Posted on their site, and I believe it was the Sun out of Toronto. Somebody put out a Survivor Series poster that had John Cena as the referee for the main event. Now, WWE never confirmed this, and I'm not saying that, 100% that it was a Photoshop, but at the same time, nothing was confirmed, nothing was set out there. There was nothing it was just one lone guy who has about 250 Twitter followers put this poster out there. I mean, it was not a guy, even I think it was just a Twitter account that's like wrestling, has wrestling in the name, like doesn't even show his identity. And the Daily Mail or the Sun, I'm losing which one it was at this time. They actually posted it as a news story of Survivor Series. John Cena's role at Survivor Series seems to be revealed. Now, while we don't have official word from WWE, this person put out on Twitter, I'm like, this guy's got 250 followers, and there is not a day that goes by that I do not see somebody putting out something. WrestleMania 35 main event already made. It's going to be Kenny Omega versus The Undertaker, like world global champ. Like people, that's what wrestling nerds do, and it seems to be more rampant than ever with Twitter and Instagram. They just put out these things that they create, these artwork things. So the fact that a news site ran with this and kind of thought that it seems like this is going to be pretty certain.
Not a good look.
Because now it's official that John Cena is not going to be the referee, that he is going to be part of the Survivor Series.
Yeah, he's going to be the unknown representative on the other side. So.
He's going to be on the SmackDown team.
Because we have Raw already set.
Yes. Which
Raw, by the way, was a pretty good show. I enjoyed it. I like how they did the Samoa Joe Finn Balor match. I like how they ended it where it was, a no contest. It was outside the ring, and then Kurt Angle comes out as these two are going at it. He says, "I'm rewarding you both. You guys are both on the team." I'm like, cool. I like this. I think Samoa Joe and Finn Balor on the team. I think it's money.
Now with Samoa Joe, I just want to say this. So we've seen Kurt Angle, we've seen Triple H. And then now this past week at a house show overseas, Samoa Joe joined the Shield. Can we just stop this? If you don't have the Shield, you don't need to have the Shield.
Yeah,
stop.
Yeah, stop it.
Because, Kurt Angle and Triple H, that was enough. But then now Samoa Joe.
Who's going to be next? Jared, you're going to be in the Shield next? I mean, a special guest? What's going on here?
If there's anybody, and I know Triple H and Kurt Angle don't feel like they should, I don't feel like they should be in the Shield. But I feel like they could be in the Shield. Even more. Samoa Joe is just like a, what is that? Is he's not even supposed to be a good guy.
I know.
So what is going on?
He's supposed to be the bad guy.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
That makes, come
it's
on now.
Odd placement.
That's enough. I'm kind of glad. I'm
glad Roman Reigns is back.
That's what I didn't want to say it. I didn't want to say I'm glad Roman Reigns is back.
See, I love Roman Reigns, though. I'm a Roman Reigns guy. So I'm glad he's back. I'm glad he's healthy. I wish he didn't have this illness so we didn't have to see all that garbage because it's awful. I don't want to don't use Triple H in that spot in a live event somewhere. Let's do it on a pay-per-view, damn it, or have if something happens with the Shield and something happens and guess what? Triple H's music hits. You're like, oh shoot, here he comes. Who's he helping out? And then
I kind of wonder if they're really if Triple H and the rest of the WWE staff is trying to grow their global audience more than they have before. Because if you look at the past month, all these shows that have not been in the United States we got new tag team champions. We got a new world champion. We got Triple H joining the Shield down in South America. We got Luke Harper this past week with Eric Rowan, and not as the Bludgeon Brothers, which was weird. They just came out as themselves, but coming out and making a return before they make their debut as the Bludgeon Brothers. What
was that all about? What do you think? What do you make of this Bludgeon Brothers thing already? I mean, I do like the little vignettes.
I mean, there's really not much to make of it. I don't. I mean, they could probably challenge. I just look at it like an Ascension style. They'll challenge for the tag team champions.
They're better than Ascension, though.
But I feel like, same with a Bray Wyatt, they're kind of running thin on this whole dark, mysterious, because we're not buying it, especially with the Bray Wyatts who keep losing, their singles matches. It's should start using them in a tag team and what's nice about the tag team role is it seems to be a less vocal role. You get to kind of go out there and wrestle and go for those championships. With those guys single, you gotta have more mouthpieces with them. You gotta really have a good plan. And what's nice is that maybe this can buy some time before you have another plan for a Luke Harper, for example, or maybe this could set up for a breakup, and then you have Luke Harper versus Eric Rowan. But just giving us Luke Harper versus Eric Rowan right now, I don't feel it has any importance or meaning behind it.
Yeah, no, I agree. Now let me ask you this: between the two shows, between SmackDown and Raw and SmackDown this week, which show did you like more? I was more on the Raw side this week. I was reading a few different things online. A lot of people liked SmackDown better than Raw this week. Where do you stand on it from watching the shows?
It's Raw was pretty good, and you did have a tag team championship change, which again was interesting.
You had the bruiserweight on Raw, man. That was awesome.
You had Pete Dunne versus Enzo, champion versus champion.
I love Pete Dunne. Pete Dunne is like watching him down in the UK tournament and NXT. The guy really, he's just when his music hit, I'm like, oh shoot, here we go. I love it. I thought that brought a little infusion into the program, and he took care of business. He looked great. I'm hoping to see more Pete Dunne on WWE programming. That's the plan. I know they're doing something. Well, the British, the UK division on 205 Live. I did see that, but I want to see him on Raw or SmackDown. I want to see him on those shows more because Pete Dunne is very good.
How could you not do something with him?
He's too
when
good.
They're in the UK.
Exactly. Or Tyler Bate. Why wouldn't you have Tyler Bate in there too? He was the first UK champion who he defeated Pete Dunne in that inaugural title match where it was a back and forth match. I went back and watched it before. I've watched it a couple times. It's a fantastic match. They put on good shows. So I'm kind of wondering. I know I love Pete Dunne. I would like to see Tyler Bate too. I know I'm asking for everything, but you got the UK, you're over in the United Kingdom. Why don't you have why don't you have them both? But Pete Dunne, I enjoyed it. I thought he put on a good match.
And also we had over the past week on SmackDown, we saw Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn together, but unfortunately, after that show was over, they were sent home from the UK tour.
Yeah, that was not good.
It's kind of hard because you want them to be these bad guys, and then they're these bad guys, and then you're saying
and then WWE says go home.
Yeah,
like I don't get that. Like I understand. I know they're. From the reports, we're not actually in the in the locker room. We're not backstage, but it sounds like the two of them are, they're just kind of doing what they want. And I think the higher ups at WWE are not too happy with what they're doing.
What they were essentially saying is this past week they were in business for themselves.
Yeah, they were doing their own thing.
Doing their own thing, and they weren't doing with the New Day on SmackDown what they wanted them to do, or what they wanted Sami Zayn versus Kofi Kingston. They wanted him to kind of get him over. And they didn't really do their role that they were supposed to do as a heel. There's actually quite this definition about what they were supposed to do. If I can bring it up, I will send it. It's quite confusing. So, all right, here's what it is. So what WWE wanted Owens and Zayn were supposed to feed for the New Day. And what the feed were, and believe me, I think I know everything about wrestling, but this is an interesting one. So feed means the heel's role during a babyface comeback where he runs at the babyface only to be repeatedly fended off, with the hope that the series of bumps by the heel will generate positive fan heat for the babyface. That is a lot of like the heel to the babyface, back to the babyface to the heel. Like so what were they supposed to do that they didn't really do? They were supposed to be heels, but heels in a certain way that made the babyface.
So can we have true heels? These guys are being true heels, and then sorry guys, you're not following the rules, and guess what? You have to go home. You know how many times Stone Cold Steve Austin back in the day when he was doing his thing, you think he went off script and did his own thing multiple times? You bet your ass he did.
I think it only makes him look better.
I think so too. Why don't you let him? It's not like they were doing anything profane or something that's against their policies.
They were doing it together, and that's kind of what you want. It takes you back to the day where they made everybody ride together. If you're good guys, you rode with the good guys. Bad guys rode with the bad guys.
Exactly.
So the fact that it wasn't like Kevin Owens was seen hanging out with the New Day, like drinking beer backstage on camera.
Hanging out with Kofi.
With the guy that he's currently backstage supposed to be with, being a heel with that guy. So sending them home together is like saying, hey, we sent, it'd be like if you told me back in 1998, well, where's D-Generation X? if you told me D-Generation X isn't at this house show tonight because they were together, not with anybody else, but Shawn Michaels, Triple H, X-Pac, they were all together backstage being degenerates, I would say, that's awesome.
I love that. I think that moves the needle up, and then the stock goes up from there.
Yeah.
So I think I actually, depending on how WWE plays this out, I'm kind of curious to see how it works. But this could actually work out okay, where they could be like, maybe they use it as a work too. Yeah, I know they sent them home, but maybe they turn this out. Creative has been throwing stuff out at the last second. Maybe they use this as a work, and maybe they boost their heel status a little bit, because I think they're the best heels on TV right now.
So the other big news in the world of professional wrestling this week, after about a month of what we thought was actually, I liked it better this week because I thought it was real. And then we find out that the exchanges between the hottest star not in WWE, thanks to his performance last year at Wrestle Kingdom, Kenny Omega, will now be facing Chris Jericho at the upcoming Wrestle Kingdom pay-per-view on January the 4th. After I said their Twitter exchanges going back for a month about everyone not knowing that Jericho wasn't essentially under WWE contract, and when he was going back and forth with Kenny Omega, people thought that was a shoot. Finding out that Jericho has not been under WWE contract for a little bit. He's been a free agent.
Yeah.
And he is now officially signed to go one-on-one with Kenny Omega.
Is it a one-off, do we know? Have we got any confirmation on the contract for that?
And I've heard these rumors that this could bleed into a WWE storyline. Now, with them facing off January 4th and then maybe, leading up to another matchup at WrestleMania or something like that.
Here's the thing. If WWE sees that they have a great match at Wrestle Kingdom, you could only imagine what they would do. They would want to eat that up right away and get it at WrestleMania. Why wouldn't they? Because Chris Jericho still puts on a hell of a show. So
Kenny Omega is one of those guys. He's there with the Young Bucks, and he's there with the current, the Cody Rhodes right now, that they love their spot outside of WWE. They love their traditional wrestling places, and New Japan Wrestling, Ring of Honor, these places. So it might be hard for Kenny Omega because of the fact that he might feel like he's not going to be treated the right way. That's why a lot of WCW stars didn't go over to WWE, because of the fact that the Buff Bagwells, they were somebody in WCW and they bring them over to WWE and they kick them out the door like their very first night.
Yeah, that's the thing
Sting,
too.
that's why he never came over, because he was afraid of that. Now Kenny Omega's no Sting, but when it comes to that character,
but he's definitely
he's the hottest thing in professional wrestling. If you go into a hot topic right now, and this is just insane to me, that shows you the power of New Japan Wrestling and Ring of Honor Wrestling right now, is that if you go into a hot topic, which is a national retailer, they have WWE shirts as you would expect, but they have Kenny Omega shirts. And again, Kenny Omega, he's a Ring of Honor, New Japan Wrestling independent, does whatever he wants. I mean, you don't see that. I mean, they have Cody Rhodes shirts as well, but you don't see at a national chain that's all over the country. I mean, you see that at the shows.
Absolutely.
You'd see that at a New Japan Wrestling show or Ring of Honor show, but to see, AJ Styles shirts or Samoa Joe shirts in like 2000, at Walmart when he was never in WWE would be crazy.
I love it.
But, it's awesome because it's bringing up wrestling as a whole. It's not just selling WWE, it's selling wrestling. It's showing people, it's bringing in a kid with his dad and going, hey, I want the Kenny Omega shirt. And they go, he's not in WWE. And to tell his dad there's more than WWE and kind of open his eyes to that. Because
then you're like, whoa.
There's a lot of people out there, not, wrestling fans, but let's say WWE fans, don't realize that there's wrestling outside. There's a lot of people who don't realize there's football outside of the NFL. You know what I mean? They don't realize these things. So it brings up wrestling as a whole. But what I'm saying is, do you really think that Kenny Omega might come over to WWE? Do you think it's a possibility?
Yes. Why? If
from his standpoint, what do you think from his, not from WWE standpoint? Because there was a big talk last year after his Wrestle Kingdom match, and I'll be 100% honest. Last year, and I'm not out of the loop. I'm not a huge wrestling nerd. I don't go to a wrestling show and drop $400 on merchandise and just watch everything from all over the world. I'll probably watch this Wrestle Kingdom after it's already aired, because on at 5 a.m. I'm not going to wake up at 5 a.m. and pay money to see it.
Yeah.
But I'll watch it later that day. But what I'm saying is that, Kenny Omega, he's happy in where he was, and they brought this up last year when this Wrestle Kingdom thing, to me, kind of came. I'm not really familiar with it. If you would have said, have you ever heard of Wrestle Kingdom, I would say yes, but I wouldn't be able to go into details.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden it's like they're on their what will be Wrestle Kingdom, I think 13 this year.
Yep.
And now I've heard of it. Yeah. Thanks to the match he had last year with Okada. Now I've heard of Wrestle Kingdom, and now they're trying to hype it up. Do you think now it's time for him to go? Because last year they were talking, and he was saying, no, I like my spot. I don't want to go.
If I'm Vince McMahon, why don't you just write him a blank check and say, put a number and I'll come see you soon? You know what I mean? Like, why not? He's one of those guys that he's that good. Pay the guy whatever number. I mean, if it's not all about the money for him, that's great. That's wonderful. But Vince McMahon can open up his wallet and say, you know what? Maybe you don't want to come here, but what can I do to make you an offer you can't refuse?
Do you think of a New Japan Wrestling or Ring of Honor Wrestling working together? That's what essentially they've been doing lately. If they could find ways to keep guys, meaning like they've kept the Young Bucks and they've kept Kenny Omega. Do you think if they find a way to keep guys that they could essentially try to compete? I mean, it's early. It's early, but
it's too early, man.
The last couple of years, this organization has been rising really fast, and the only worry is that they lose people to the United States, and also that Japan has got that cultural difference in the time zone and everything that goes with it. But the fact that I heard of Wrestle Kingdom last year and now I'm going to hear of it again this year, for a second year in a row. Like before last year, I heard of it because of a match that happened. This year, I was aware of it heading into it. So it did its job last year. That match did a ton for that organization because I've never really heard of it. And I heard of it then after the fact.
Yeah.
And then this year, heading into it, for example, it's January 4th. It'll be taking place. And here in November, I'm already aware that it's going to be coming up.
And you're going to catch it. You're going to
So maybe next year I might be aware of it and might hear about rumors of a match in July. More and more.
You get more in tune.
So I'm curious to where this is going to go in the world of professional wrestling, future wise. And I'm wondering where Kenny Omega is going to come. I would like to see him in WWE, but at the same time, I don't want to see too many of these guys lost and misused in WWE.
Yeah, I get that, but here's the thing: WWE is the big leagues. Anything but WWE is not. It's like you know how it is. We use the baseball reference.
Don't say that to a hardcore wrestling fan, though.
And WWE is the big leagues, though. I don't care, hardcore wrestling fan or not. Merchandise sales, the money they're making, they have their own network. They do.
It's the big leagues when it comes to the payday.
Yeah,
to a lot of these guys who are consider themselves traditional wrestlers, they like the New Japan Wrestlings of the world. They like where they're actually going to compete, in a stage where they feel that it's more athleticism than it is spectacle.
I get that, but here's the thing. New Japan and Ring of Honor, they can merge, work together all they want. I still don't think anyone's going to touch WWE. I mean, WWE is just,
Well, they have the money behind them.
They don't have the money, yes. And I mean, I don't want to argue audience and fans because, they
have the history.
They have the
WWE's been around and be like, there could be another group of, and again, it's cultural thing too, because in Japan, it's not just New Japan Wrestling because in Japan itself, it might be bigger than not saying bigger than WWE, but it might be more comparative. Like it's, for example, of comparing, Major League Soccer here to soccer in, another country.
Yeah, like the English Premier League or something. Yes.
Like the English Premier League would probably be the WWE. They're the top level. The MLS here, while very popular, is American.
You might put them as like New Japan.
And there's a lot of people who essentially, for example, play in MLS because they're American and might just stay in MLS because it's popular enough that they don't have to go to, it's popular enough where they can make money off of it.
Yeah.
Like, for example, Fox Sports 1 is getting to a point where it's popular enough where you don't have to go to ESPN. ESPN isn't the only option. You can be a Twitter verified guy and have a sports talk show that's watched by millions of people and be in the mainstream of sports talk and not be on ESPN.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I get the analogy. I think that's a pretty good analogy. I mean, but
ESPN's still ESPN.
Yeah, but ESPN. I will, not to get too far off tangent here, but ESPN's ratings aren't that great anymore, though.
Well, WWE's ratings are, WWE isn't what it was in the late '90s and early 2000s.
Do you think it has anything to do with Ring of Honor? Do you think it has anything to do with New Japan Pro Wrestling? I don't think it has anything to do with it. I think it's just we're in a different time.
No, because I think wrestling fans are the type who consume all wrestling. So if wrestling was good in WWE, it wouldn't be they would pick one or the other. They would just consume both.
And here's the thing. I mean, I'm a big wrestling fan. I'll dabble in the Ring of Honor stuff. I mean, I know a little bit what's going on. I mean, WWE's where, that's my go-to. I mean, New Japan.
Look like a Christopher Daniels. I mean, he's a name who's really never been in WWE. Yeah. And we know who he is.
Yeah, we know who he is. I mean, you got also guys like in NXT, like Cassius Ohno.
Yeah.
He's good.
Adam Cole, we knew who he was when he came into NXT because he was...
Fish and O'Reilly.
We knew who they were. For example, we know who Kenny Omega is right now, and he's never been in WWE.
That's how good he is.
Yes.
That's how good he is.
Well, we know who the Young Bucks are, too, and that's how good they are.
And by the way, I know we talked about the video game not too long ago, the Young Bucks, where they were going to be in the game. They declined it. I know we talked about that. I think it was about a month ago. I think, but I did read something where the Young Bucks declined the invitation from WWE.
One thing they did not decline, and it seems like everybody's on these things now. These pop vinyl figures that literally every pop culture, sports, or professional wrestling, Stranger Things, regardless, character is on. They just announced today, the Young Bucks, that they will have some official pop vinyl figures made of themselves. So the world outside of WWE, but the world inside WWE is definitely interesting as well. So a very busy week in the world of professional wrestling, inside and out, as we're going to take a break. And when we return, we have a 3 count. We're going to talk professional wrestling, stick to mostly WWE, but we got some other stuff in there for you as well. As you are listening to the Heels of the Face podcast on Sports War Radio, Rat Pack Radio, and now on iTunes.
The New York Jets are rising and are ready to compete in the AFC. Boy Green and Ty Butler will give you everything you need to know about the Jets every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. From reviewing the previous game and looking ahead to the next matchup, to all of the news and its 4 downs, the Jet Zone has everything. Follow at BoyGreen25 and at Ty D. Butler on Twitter. Proud member of Sports War Radio. Let the battle begin.
This program is simulcast on WRPR Rat Pack Radio. Go to ratpacksports.com for more information.
Do you want to stay up to date on the latest sports news? Come check out After the Whistle from 4 to 5 p.m. every Friday night. We talk about the NHL, we talk about the NFL, we talk about the MLB, you name it, we got it. Tune in on Sports War Radio.
Now is the time to get your voice heard. Sports War Radio is now accepting applications for driven and knowledgeable sports fans who want to start their very own podcast about their favorite team. Sports War Radio has an international audience and is growing fast. Don't miss the chance to become the go-to news source for your favorite team. Email sportswarradio@gmail.com and tell us why you would be a great addition to our team. Sports War Radio. Let the battle begin.
Now is the time to get your voice heard. Sports War Radio is now accepting applications for driven and knowledgeable sports fans who want to start their very own podcast about their favorite team. Sports War Radio has an international audience and is growing fast. Don't miss the chance to become the go-to news source for your favorite team. Email sportswarradio@gmail.com and tell us why you would be a great addition to our team. Sports War Radio. Let the battle begin.
Let's get back to the action. This is the Heel to the Face podcast on Sports War Radio.
Heel to the Face podcast is back on the air. It is time for our 3 count. We got 3 questions for you. We're joined with our man, Paul Boy Green.
What's up, Paul?
Oh, factual. What's up, my fellas?
I don't know what he just said there. So let's move on with.
He said it's factual. What's up, fellas?
All right. So
Thanks, Paul.
A little lead in. So now Sunday night, Bound for Glory, standing room only, no real issue there. But one thing that they mentioned when I was at Bound for Glory, trying to tell us, wow, how lucky can we be, is that if we have a ticket for Bound for Glory, you can use that ticket to come all week long for a whole week of TV tapings. Did I realize that actually wasn't that great of a deal when what seemed to be a Craigslist posting just a couple days later found in the Ottawa area that Impact Wrestling was hiring for actors. Now, originally I was reading the posting thinking, oh, sweet, for like bodyguards, for people, in the back, maybe this is how you get into wrestling. And then the description was to wear casual clothing, You can be under 16 as long as you have parents' permission, and hold signs in the audience, and your hours are from when the show starts to when the show ends. And I said, that's essentially just paying people to be in the crowd.
That's awesome.
I'm thinking, bodyguard, security guard, somebody, dressed in, maybe be one of those Undertaker, druids.
$12.50.
But $12.50 an hour, which, Canada, that's kind of about close to about $10 an hour here. Now, my question is, now WWE, we know everybody, we've given away tickets, but they've never, I don't believe, paid somebody money. Like, took out an ad in a newspaper to pay them money to go to a WWE show.
That's awesome.
Now, my question to the panel is, if WWE started doing this and actually putting out ads to pay people, now, let's say you're not in the area, so you're watching on television. Would that affect your fanhood? And the answers were, I don't watch for the crowd, meaning I'm still going to watch regardless if it's if a crowd that's entirely paid, or the paid crowd ruins it. And 70% of people out of our votes said that they don't watch for the crowd. So if WrestleMania's 80,000 people is essentially 10,000 people, and 70,000 people who are just out of work looking to get paid some money for 3 hours, 70% of people say that's all right. What do you think, Paul?
Heck no. See, here's the thing. You know what? I love Santa Claus, okay? The thought of a fat old white guy coming down my chimney is pleasant to drop off presents. But if I know that Santa doesn't exist, it lacks some of its luster. So if I knew that these people were being paid to hold up the signs, then it would create this fake atmosphere, and I'd be thinking about this fourth wall that I shouldn't be thinking about. So heck no. If they're paying these people to make signs, it lessens the experience for myself.
Yeah, the signs can't be unique.
Yeah, right. The signs can't be unique anyway.
There was a unique sign there. I don't know what it was, but the reason I knew it was unique because I saw it getting ripped out of some guy's hands at Bound for Glory and taken backstage. So that's how I knew that guy wasn't getting paid. That was a unique
that was
sign.
A unique sign. Yeah.
Yeah, so the ones that they would pay for would probably not be of the kind that are controversial or interesting.
I mean, not to get too far off topic, but the signs even back in the day, I remember watching watching Monday Night Raw back in the 90s and early 2000s. You know how many signs were in the crowd? It was insane.
Yeah. If you go back in WWE Network and watch any Raw or SmackDown or pay-per-view from the 90s and early 2000s,
signs everywhere.
Everyone had a sign. I went to a Raw back in the early 2000s, and I not just brought a sign, but I was like, it was part of the deal. You have to bring a sign. It's like going to a baseball game, you got to bring a hat. Like, that's how signs work.
Bring my glove,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It would probably even, but I was going to say glove, but it was even more apparent than that. It was like you have to bring a hat because even more people have hats than gloves. I mean, literally, it was like 4 out of 5 people had signs.
Yeah, and that's the way it should have been. Even I did it as a kid, going to the War Memorial back in the day. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where it's like it's lost its luster with the technological age. You see signs. I mean, I will say you do see some creative signs. And by the way, nice job, Jared, by putting at heel to the face on the signage out there too. I saw you drop the ball on that one. What's going on with that, man? You got to promote the show.
Yeah, come on, man.
Yeah, come on, man.
Be thinking you're the ringleader of this. Circus.
Yeah, come on.
Be thinking of branding, man.
I had no idea, exactly where I was going to be sitting at Bound for Glory, and the fact that it was going to be pretty much on TV the whole time.
He was getting paid for it the whole time.
I did not get paid for it the whole time. That would have been awesome.
$12.50.
Believe me, it's so weird because what I'll say later in the show about Bound for Glory when I detail my experience there, I can just say the words. It was awesome and weird at the very same time. But yeah, apparently people are all about watching professional wrestling, and if we have to go through an era where the crowds are so little that people are starting to get paid to be in the crowd. Well, apparently the people who watch wrestling won't start turning off. So the good news is it won't just, if that day comes, that doesn't mean wrestling's dying because 70% of people saying, no, I'm still there.
I'm still watching. Yeah, I'm still watching for the, I'm watching for the wrestling. I'm watching for the storylines. I want to see that. The crowd is nice. I know I kind of said earlier that I enjoyed the British crowd over there. But I don't look into it that much.
I will say for an event like WrestleMania, the crowd is a big part of the show.
Yeah, and WWE's never going to pay $12.50 for all those people to come because people are going to come anyways. It's a spectacle. It's like it's Super Bowl.
And the reason the crowd is part of the show, I'm not saying part of the show in the sense of they contribute to the show, but they add to the spectacle. There's a reason why WrestleMania is revered as WrestleMania, and it's because when you see that picture, there's the fact that the helicopter flies by and has that shot of the stadium completely full. That's how you know it's WrestleMania and not tables, ladders, and chairs. That's the only. A lot of times if you look at the matches in the ring, you wouldn't know. But that's part of the show. That's part of the presentation. We can get into pyro and all. Like I said, WrestleMania. If that does not have pyro, this might be the last WrestleMania I go to. You cannot have WrestleMania without pyro. Come on now.
Hell, you shouldn't even have Monday Night Raw or Tuesday Night SmackDown without pyro. I'm sorry, I'm a pyro guy too. So
when it comes to like a large crowd, it's a big deal. But,
absolutely.
We've seen a lot of crazy things with WWE lately, moving everybody to one side. Could they be moving to a point where they're actually paying people to come in? We'll see.
I don't think WWE will get to that point. I could see the other circuits doing it, but I mean, obviously we're seeing it with.
Well, it's hard to see the other circuits doing it because they don't have enough money. It's weird that Impact Wrestling is this weird oddity where it has money to pay some big stars, but then doesn't have anyone to show up to pay the ticket prices, which you would essentially think are paying the big stars. Yeah. And that's what kind of shows to me how big, and I mentioned this last week, TV contracts are. Like we're seeing now with National Football League, and we're seeing now with a lot of what once was things where people paid to go, and that was driving the economy. WWE and professional wrestling as a whole is being paid more by TV contracts, meaning Impact Wrestling saying, we'll actually pay people to be here. Nobody here will be actually giving us money. We'll be literally spending money. We'll be spending money on the wrestlers. We'll be spending money on the venue. We'll be spending money on the crowd. We'll be bringing in essentially no money, but it's still worth it because what they bring in on television is enough, meaning the NFL is saying if you don't come to a game and we play at an empty stadium, it's still going to be worth it because we're going to be making enough to put it on TV.
Well, yeah. I mean, Paul, you watch enough NBA. You look at a lot of the arenas in the NBA. Do you see them selling out? I don't.
They're making more money off of it being the Little Caesars Arena and all the advertisements in between than they are on the actual people coming and buying a ticket.
Absolutely, no doubt.
So we move on to a second question. Rumors have it that the WrestleMania site for next year, WrestleMania 35 in 2019, is going to be announced soon. Some people that were finalists, many people thought Minnesota was a finalist with their U.S. Bank Stadium. Many people thought Toronto again was a finalist, but it looks to be we're down to 3, according to many in the business. And they've said we've come down to New York City, which would essentially probably be MetLife Stadium, Detroit, which would essentially probably be Ford Field, and an interesting one, Philly, which would either be the baseball stadium. I'm assuming it'd probably be the football stadium because it's really close to the start of opening day of baseball, so they probably wouldn't want to. But either way, Detroit, New York City, and Philly. Those are the 3 finalists. You had to pick one. Who you got? We'll start with Brandon.
Ooh, that's a good one. Some of our listeners, sorry, I do not like Philly. The only thing good about Philly is the movie Rocky. That's the only saving grace as a Cowboys fan. So I take them
the one
out.
On this list is yes, they hosted WrestleMania 15. They hosted WrestleMania 15, but essentially
New York City gets everything now.
Yeah,
for me, if I'm picking the 3, you guys could call me out for being wrong, but I'm going Detroit. I want to see it at Ford Field.
What about you, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, all 3 of these are very delectable options. They're very kind of market cities. I initially leaned towards 8 Mile as well. Eminem's home turf. I like the big city. I like everything, and I think something that you've talked about before.
Detroit's
Jared,
probably the smallest of these cities too. When you say the big city,
that's fair. That's okay because
it's still a big city though. Still one of the big cities in the United States too.
And here's the thing:
but it's one of the lower.
Is more than just the turkey. There's all the other meals around the table. When you go to WrestleMania, it's about experiencing the rest of the city, and I think there's a lot of city to enjoy in Detroit.
What Detroit are you people going to? I went to Detroit for WrestleMania 23. I've been to Detroit before. What do you mean? The homeless population?
You have that in every.
Crime?
You have that in every city.
But Detroit is. There's a reason why RoboCop was filmed. It's synonymous. It just went bankrupt years ago. It's the place that you hear when you watch the nightly news about how they have the $1 houses because they're ridden by drugs and crime and bankruptcy because of all the big car businesses that have left. Now, granted, I don't think it's a city that's like size of Rochester, New York, or Tupelo, Mississippi, or anything like that. But when it comes to the major sports cities, it is definitely. Now it's on the rise after being on a historic
it's moving
decline.
Up. It's moving back up. Why not? You know what? It'll help the economy even more.
So, I mean, if you're going to say Detroit...
What about Motown?
Now, Motown has a lot to offer.
Yes, Motown is definitely good.
Yes, but when it comes to you want to talk about things the city has to offer, Philadelphia's got a lot to offer. Liberty Bell, the museum...
Philadelphia's off my list. Paul, you know why.
I like Detroit, and I went to Detroit, and what's nice is I would either pick Detroit or Philadelphia just because it's been so long for the last 2 of those to host them. New York City, well, it was about 5 years, 35.
New York City gets everything.
Yes, so I'm against New York City. It just hosted WrestleMania 29, and while that's not as close together, the 29 to 35, as we're seeing in New Orleans, 30 and 34,
they get everything. SummerSlams, they get it all. Let's spread it around a little bit.
So I'm saying either Detroit or Philly, and in this instance, I'm going to say Philly, just because
he wants a Philly cheesesteak.
And I do like a Philly cheesesteak. There
you go.
But
that's a deal maker.
The last one they had was WrestleMania 15 in the arena, and this would be the first time that they're outdoors, meaning the Detroit one's been done at Ford Field, the New York City one's been done at MetLife Stadium, so this would be essentially different. Detroit, what really is appetizing for Detroit for WWE is because that Little Caesars Arena is there now, you have Little Caesars Arena right there for your Monday Night Raw, you have WrestleMania right there across the street. I mean, you can have everything within a block of each other, because they just created that arena district where literally all the arenas are within a block of each other. So that's really appetizing for WWE. But if I'm going to pick, I'm going to say Philly. And I think all three are close. I don't want to see any excuses for WrestleMania 33. If one of these is picked, Brandon, Paul, you got to go. Come on now. All three of us. We got to go. Come on now.
I don't want to go to Philly, though.
For WrestleMania?
I don't like Philly, man. Sorry. Sorry to our Philly fans.
As a Giants fan, do you think I'd like to go in the Dallas Cowboy Stadium?
You should. It's a beautiful facility. Why wouldn't you? I mean, I'll even go to the dump called MetLife, even for that,
So we move on to question number 3. Now, this past week on Twitter, there was a little bit of a Twitter rivalry between Piers Morgan and Corey Graves. Give it up to Piers Morgan for watching some wrestling. I didn't know he did that. But this past week, Corey Graves did his usual heel thing where he said, somebody's hated in the city. And he said, Enzo is the most hated man in England behind Piers Morgan. And Piers Morgan was watching, in which he said, aren't you the guy who couldn't make it as a wrestler, so you ended up being a bad commentator? And so the Twitter war actually went on more than that with Corey Graves. There was a back and forth between Corey Graves and Piers Morgan. So the question I have for you, would you like to see Piers Morgan come in and maybe replace Booker T for a night?
Yes.
Third man on commentary.
Yes, and can we make it actually more than just a night? Because I'm going to be honest, all the time I'm watching, Raw, and then I hear Booker T's commentary, and then he'll, lash out, and I get it's kind of like this character thing, like you get the pros and the cons when a good guy comes out to a bad guy comes out, but I think Booker T's commentary just plain sucks, if we're going to be perfectly honest.
I agree with you. I'm not the biggest Piers Morgan fan, to be honest with you. I could care less. I'm kind of indifferent, but I think
he's controversial. That's what I like about him. I get
the controversial part, but, I mean, I'll give it to Piers Morgan because Booker T is not that. I would say Piers Morgan is a better, he's better on the microphone, so to speak, than Booker T. So I think it would add a little. What is that word you use all the time? Je ne sais quoi, Paul?
Je ne sais quoi. Yeah.
There you go.
Now I'll give you the whole Twitter rivalry. So Corey Graves then said, "I'm sorry, I meant no disrespect. I had no idea who you were. I simply just Googled the most hated man in England." And so welcome to relevance. Welcome to relevance, though. I can't say that word when I see it the first time around. So he did. And if you Google the most hated man in England, Piers Morgan does come up, where Piers Morgan then said, mate, I have 5.8 million more Twitter followers than you. When it comes to relevance, I'm John Cena and you're Heath Slater. So good for Piers Morgan.
He threw the Heath Slater, so he definitely watches wrestling. Good for him.
And Corey Graves and says, I owe you an apology. I actually do like the Carpool Karaoke show. And he said, oh, my bad, sorry. Meaning, I think that's that guy who hosts the Late Show that does the English guy.
Oh,
James Corbin or
Corbin,
something.
Yeah, Corbin.
Yes,
yeah.
Not to be confused with his brother Baron Corbin.
Yeah, long lost brother.
And Enzo Mora even went in there and said, from one journalist to another, your facts are straight, Piers Morgan. So I think that's just him playing the heel, against Corey Graves.
Absolutely.
But, so yeah, I'd like to see him join and the fact that I'm reading these off of WWE.com, the fact that they have jumped on board with this means that there might be some more behind this than we thought.
Of course, if WWE's got to post it somewhere, guess what? They're definitely involved some way, shape, or form. It's good for ratings and everything too.
All right, so that's going to do it for our 3 questions of the week. When we come back, our Twitter question of the week and my trip to Bound for Glory 2017 in Ottawa, Ontario. We got the slides ready. And we're going to it's a nice family vacation we're going to be going through in a little bit. We got the slides ready. We got the projector ready. And hope you're on board for family vacation to Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, as you're listening to the Heel to the Face podcast on Sports War Radio, Rat Pack Radio, and on iTunes.
The New York Jets are rising and are ready to compete in the AFC. Boyd Green and Ty Butler will give you everything you need to know about the Jets every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. From reviewing the previous game and looking ahead to the next matchup, to all of the news and 4 downs, the Jet Zone has everything. Follow @BoyGreen25 and @TyDButler on Twitter. Proud member of Sports War Radio. Let the battle begin.
This program is simulcast on WRPR Rat Pack Radio. Go to ratpacksports.com for more information.
Do you want to stay up to date on the latest sports news? Come check out After the Whistle from 4 to 5 p.m. every Friday night. We talk about the NHL, we talk about the NFL, we talk about the MLB. You name it, we got it. Tune in on Sports War Radio.
Now is the time to get your voice heard. Sports War Radio is now accepting applications for driven and knowledgeable sports fans who want to start their very own podcast about their favorite team. Sports War Radio has an international audience and is growing fast. Don't miss the chance to become the go-to news source for your favorite team. Email sportswarradio@gmail.com and tell us why you would be a great addition to our team. Sports War Radio. Let the battle begin.
Now is the time to get your voice heard. Sports War Radio is now accepting applications for driven and knowledgeable sports fans who want to start their very own podcast about their favorite team. Sports War Radio has an international audience and is growing fast. Don't miss the chance to become the go-to news source for your favorite team. Email sportswarradio@gmail.com and tell us why you would be a great addition to our team. Sports War Radio. Let the battle begin.
Let's get back to the action. This is the Heel to the Face podcast on Sports War Radio.
Back here on the Heel to the Face podcast, it is time for our tweets of the week. We're going to start with Brandon, the Icebreaker Clements. What do you got for a tweet of the week?
All right, so you guys can find this on our @HeelToTheFace Twitter account. So the tweet of the week I have is one of our lovely favorites, WWE Creative Humor, @WWE Creative_ish. This is fantastic because I was watching SmackDown, and I did see a little. It was a little
preview,
a little preview of the Damnation, I think it's called, on USA Network. And it says here on WWE Creative Humor, at least one show on the USA Network knows how to properly book @Luke Harper, #SmackDown Live. And I couldn't agree more. Luke Harper has not been utilized the right way. Hopefully they use this Bludgeon Brothers, whatever how the hell it's going to be. Hopefully they use this well. I think this tweet was spot on. Luke Harper doesn't get enough work, and I think he's due for a run.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. Luke Harper is, it's so crazy. An indie wrestler from Rochester, New York. Now he's on national television on both wrestling and in a show that looks pretty good.
Yeah, and he
on the USA Network.
He fits the character pretty well with his look, everything. So.
Yes, unlike myself, he actually, I bet, doesn't have the option of shaving that beard.
No, he...
I can shave if I want, I just don't choose to. I think Luke Harper's to a point where he grew it out, and now they're like, now you're stuck with that. Yeah, but I wonder if he even likes that beard, because now it's like his moneymaker.
Well, why not? If it's making money, I'd love it. Right, Paul? If you got the beard and you have to roll with it, it's your moneymaker. When you just roll with
That's
it,
what you got to do.
Yeah,
that's what you got to do.
I love the beards, beard gang,
Yes. So, Paul, what is your tweet of the week?
My tweet of the week, shout out to Jim Ross at JR's Barbecue, and he gave us a reminder a couple of hours ago today that we are 20 years removed, and it's still being discussed, the Montreal Screwjob. And he had an article here kind of going back through all the events from sportsbible.com.
So I'm going to kind of piggyback off of that as well. Now, unlike Brandon over here, who uses WWE Creative Humor, I in honor of the screw job and the 20th anniversary of the Montreal screw job, there's so many great people just celebrating the anniversary or mentioning it on Twitter. So in order to show our love to the world and just randomly show, how we can reach out to anyone in the wrestling community, I am going to randomly pick one of the millions of people who decided to tweet about it being the 20th anniversary, and I have picked Christopher Kyle at Demon Duke. Happy 20th.
Christopher Kyle. 2 first names. What the hell?
Yeah. Well,
okay.
that is true. Or maybe he's just got it, backwards, like he's trying to be professional, so his real name's Kyle Christopher. But he says, happy 20th anniversary, Montreal. Screwjob, greatest wrestling story, #Survivor Series. There's a million of them on here. There's a million people talking about the same thing. In fact, we have one who's got a ticket from the event. David Morrow. We'll throw some love his way. That 20 years ago, he was in attendance. In fact, I will make these my dual tweets of the week. It's at it's the Dave Man and at Damon Duke from Christopher Kyle. Those are my dueling tweets of the week in celebration of the Montreal screw job. So those people don't know it yet. They're going to see some notifications, and maybe they'll tune into the show next week and see if they can be picked 2 weeks in a row. But you don't win the lottery more than once, so I probably doubt that. But they are going to be picked as my tweets of the week. Now, we have a few minutes to spare, and I saved this for you, Paul. You weren't in the beginning of the program.
Yes.
So a couple years ago, it's not far removed, but trying to tell my significant other I was with, who was very unfamiliar about Impact Wrestling, that in the year like 2005, Impact had a video game. They had Kurt Angle. They had Ric Flair. They had Mick Foley. They had AJ Styles and Samoa Joe when they were as hot as the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega are now. They were on Monday night at one time trying to seriously compete on Spike TV, which was the channel that Monday Night Raw was on at one time, against Monday Night Raw. They still have Jim Cornette. They still have Bobby Lashley. And Bound for Glory is their signature event. And I understand that I'm never here going to compare it to WrestleMania. But I learned that I'm not even going to compare it to Wrestle Kingdom. And it was just quite an eye-opener to me. And I really feel that it was cool that they were in Ottawa, but unlike WWE, which when they go to somewhere for WrestleMania, like draws greater than they've ever drawn before, they did not draw the best Impact Wrestling that they've ever drawn before. I think they would have done better if they didn't leave Orlando when it comes to the live audience in attendance. Now, again, the seats that they put out were completely full. They was standing room only. But what was strange about the event, let's start with the venue. So bleachers on one side only, on the TV side, one side only. And again, bleachers went up 5 rows. So bleachers only on one side only. Now, if there were bleachers around the whole thing, I would still say this is a decent crowd, but it's still pretty small. But bleachers on one side only. One thing you will never see at WrestleMania, porta potties. Porta potties, not just porta potties, but they were in a part of the stadium in which was darkened because of the fact that the arena was kind of closed off. So there was no even light for the porta potties. Now, in this it was kind of like a state fair kind of building. There were some very nice arenas around it, but this was kind of like an exhibit hall. They would have maybe like a train show in it or something. But yeah, so porta potties for bathrooms. Only 2 kinds of beer, and they were a local brewery, not Budweiser, not Labatt, not anything you've heard of. 2 kinds of beer that were weird branded, and their merchandise table, and this was the insane part to me. This is your WrestleMania. Your and you're here all week. You're here for a week, so bring every t-shirt you've ever had in a warehouse and sell it, because you're here all week. You can even be open to sell shirts all day during business hours. And yet they had 2 t-shirts for sale, one Bound for Glory and one for Latin American Exchange, a program, and a big flag of Gail Kim. 4 items of merchandise. What the hell? And this isn't at the end of the week when you've sold out of everything else. This is the beginning of the week for your main event. You have 4 items of merchandise. A 1 t-shirt for the event, a 1 t-shirt for one of the competitors, and a little tiny program, essentially, and then a flag, which I don't even know if that was just for display or they were even selling it. It was the most shoddy merchandise I've ever seen in my whole life. So, porta potties, awful merchandise, 1 concessionaire. That I've seen more concessionaires at Little League games than they had at this thing. a crowd that was only one side of the arena. And it just, to me, I knew what I was going into. I understand Bound for Glory was never, WrestleMania. But thinking a couple years ago, the main event, I think, was Kurt Angle versus Sting at a Bound for Glory. And again, they've had, I believe, 2 video games. It was just kind of, it was, again, awesome because from a standpoint of the seat that I had, if you asked me to pay $100 for the seat that I had after the fact, I would have probably said that was worth it because I was so close to their biggest matches of the year, and a lot of them were great matches, and these were all amazing matches. Bobby Lashley and Stephen Bonner within 5 feet of me, and, Abyss within 5 feet of me. It was amazing. But at the same time, it was strange because somebody who's not even a huge Impact Wrestling fan is like sitting in seats where I'm going, these should be worth more than the $20 that I paid for them. I'm literally 8 feet from the guardrail, and I paid $20. Now, that is the closest I've ever been, and that includes the independent wrestling shows that I've been to. I've been to a lot of them, but a lot of those independent wrestling shows want like $60 for like front row seats, and because of wrestling nerds, they get that. So somebody like me who has like $10 for a general admission ticket gets in there and sits on a high school bleacher. Now, so the fact that I was on this bleacher, but in the first row of this bleacher, and 8 feet from the guardrail, I was pushed aside by wrestling legend Conan when they were wrestling in the crowd. I mean, I've been close to wrestlers before, let's say at autograph signings, but never when they're actually wrestling at their biggest event. Never has John Cena actually brushed me on the shoulder in the main event of WrestleMania. I've never been that close. And Conan brushed my shoulder. Excuse me, sir, we're kind of coming in here and we're going to hit somebody with a trash can now. I mean, it was awesome that I was so close, and it was awesome because I'm trying to think, this is on the air in 120 countries. So that's why I'm trying to say it's awesome and weird, because it was awesome that I was 8 feet away from a ring that was being televised to 120 countries. But yet, crazy at the same time that something that is being televised to 120 countries is at a venue that doesn't have running water. So while Impact, it was something, the event itself, the wrestlers themselves, I think was definitely under WWE, but it was showing you that this was not an independent show. It's still a television program. It's not just, a bunch of people you've never heard of before who have day jobs. These are all professional wrestlers, that this is their professional job. But at the same time, the production of the event, I've seen better at an independent wrestling show. So strange to me. I'm watching an entire show of nothing but guys who make over $50,000 a year, to some of them making $300,000 through TNA and Impact Wrestling, but the actual event itself was put on similar to that of your local American Legion independent wrestling show. So crazy in my eyes. Strange to me that this venue was at somewhere that doesn't even have running water, but awesome at the same time that I got to take advantage of it and be so close. But I don't think they'll be doing returning to Ottawa anytime soon, seeing that we talked about earlier in the show. They have to now pay people to attend the Impact tapings. And, well, if I learned anything at Bound for Glory, while there was a great show there, even WWE would have a hard time filling the same place 5 nights in a row. In Impact Wrestling is no WWE. And at one time they were trying to compete with WWE, but we always make this comparison to minor league sports. I realized on Sunday night that Impact Wrestling is indeed the AAA of wrestling, because you do have the veterans, but AAA baseball has the veterans, but that doesn't make it a competitor. The AAA baseball team for the New York Yankees might have a aging Jose Canseco on them, but that doesn't mean that they're a competitor for Major League Baseball. And while Impact may have Bobby Lashley and Johnny Nitro and John Morrison, as they call him, Johnny Impact, that doesn't mean that they are a competitor for WWE. And I learned that very much on Sunday night. So, Paul, I hope you enjoyed that story. I hear you sitting there on the other end. And it was great having you on for our last couple segments. And it was great for all of you, the listeners. And don't forget the tweeters who helped us with our wrestling polls, as they do every single week. And we hope that you join the show again next week. More Twitter questions of the week, more listening to the program, more interaction from you, the fan, as this has been the Heel to the Face podcast for Brandon the Icebreaker Clements, Paul Boygrenaz, and myself, Jared Wicks. We hope to hear you next week as this, the Heel to the Face podcast on Sports War Radio, Rat Pack Radio, and now on iTunes.